What if I told you that you can flip a switch in your brain to force your brain to crave doing hard things? And if you learn how to flip that switch, you can not only unlock unlimited motivation, but most importantly, consistently maintain peak performance without burning out. My name is Manus, and for the past 3 years, I have been coaching hundreds of successful entrepreneurs to help them maximize their performance and output in their work. I've worked with people like Jordan Platten, Thomas Gannett, Matt Shields, and Nathan Nazareth, all of which are industry-leading entrepreneurs who know how to get a competitive edge. If you go to bed excited about your work and ready to smash your tasks the next day, but when you wake up you feel groggy, lazy, unproductive, and unmotivated, then you probably have a problem. See, what most people do to combat this is they use stimulants to stress the nervous system in order to be more focused and more productive, which leads you in a self-sabotaging loop cycle of inconsistent energy, motivation, and execution. I will give you 4 steps to follow to unlock a powerful level of motivation without needing coffee or Adderall, without being stressed and anxious, and without burning out. The main tool we're going to leverage is dopamine. Dopamine is the #1 molecule for success. And the funny thing is that dopamine is the thing that's holding people back from getting more stuff done. And more specifically, a dysfunctional dopamine system. So you might be getting a lot of information surrounding dopamine, and you probably know that you should stay away from cheap dopamine and instead get expensive dopamine or hard dopamine. But what does this even mean, and is it actually true? Here's the right way to think about dopamine. Your dopamine is like a reserve or like a gas tank. You can deplete the reserve, but you can also replenish it. The level of the tank is simply the level of dopamine you have, which resembles your level of excitement, drive, and motivation. Being in your everyday life, your dopamine levels will rise above baseline, but will also drop below baseline. Another way to think about this is that the reserve we just talked about functions exactly like a wave pool. When you experience something that increases your dopamine above baseline, the wave pool will create an artificial wave. Now, the bigger the wave, the more water will flow out of the pool, which will cause the water reserve to go down. So what we simply need to do here is to maintain a high level of water in your reserve, or otherwise maintain a high dopamine baseline consistently. And we do that by switching our behavior from chasing pleasure to chasing pain. See, there is something that happens automatically inside your brain every time you experience pleasure, and it's called the dopamine homeostasis. I don't want to confuse you here, but what this simply means is that every time the scale tips over to pleasure, your brain will automatically tip it to the side of pain. So the exact same level of increase above baseline that you just experienced, you will exactly also experience the exact same level of decrease in dopamine afterwards because of this thing, which is called dopamine homeostasis. So think about this. You sit down on your chair and you eat a chocolate, big increase in dopamine, the dopamine homeostasis system kicks in, equal drop of dopamine in order to maintain balance in your brain. Now, you might think that, okay, I got a dopamine high, so after my dopamine drops, I'm just gonna feel back to normal. But here's when the problem begins. After your dopamine drops an equal amount with the amount you essentially spiked your dopamine for, you will feel lazy, slow, and unmotivated. And the craziest thing is that the more water you push out of the pool from those dopamine highs you experienced, the lower the water level is going to drop, which will make you needing to do the things that give you the dopamine high in order to just fill out your normal baseline. But when you do something that gets you in pain, such as exercising, cold exposure, or even acupuncture on a bed of nails, the dopamine homeostasis system also kicks in and automatically tips the scale over to pleasure at a proportional level. The step #1 that you have to do in order to change your behavior from pleasure seeking to pain seeking is sit down and in a piece of paper or in a document, write down a list of the things you're craving to do or that you're doing impulsively every day as a habit. And those things can include coffee, nicotine, checking your phone, snacking, watching YouTube videos, etc. Now that you have clarity on the things that are holding you back from unlocking a powerful level of motivation, what you need to do is go to step 2, which is take all those things that you wrote down and implement the no-go moments. What are the no-go moments? A no-go moment is when you deliberately refrain from doing a thing that you would otherwise impulsively do. And the way it works is that it activates a specific part of your brain, the basal ganglia, which is otherwise known as the willpower muscle. Every time you deliberately refrain from doing one of those things you wrote down in your list, that muscle becomes stronger, just like your bicep muscles, for example, when you do bicep curls. What you need to do here is give yourself a timeline of 30 days. In the first 10 days, implement 5 to 10 no-go moments per day. Day 10 to 20, implement 10 to 15 no-go moments per day. And then day 20 onwards, you implement 15 to 20 no-go moments per day. Keep in mind that the no-go moments aren't effective just when you avoid the bad habits you wrote down in your list. You can also use a no-go moment for a trivial thing as well. For example, refraining from getting up and going to the kitchen to get a glass of water or whatever, like a trivial thing like this, for example. Step 3 is managing your dopamine sources. Do you remember what we talked about with the wave pool and the water getting out of the pool? Well, the things that make the waves larger is bigger highs in dopamine. And the things that will usually tend to give you the largest increase in dopamine is combining multiple sources of dopamine altogether. Coffee, nicotine, music, work, food. All of those things together will give you a big wave and they will cause water to get out of the pool, which will make you feel low and unmotivated when that wave passes. I will give you 3 levels of dopamine management for long-term productivity and performance that you can follow. Level 1, which is the least sustainable, is 3 to 4 dopamine sources at a time. Level 2, which is decent but not ideal for every time, 2 to 3 dopamine sources at once. And level 3, which is the most optimal, is 1 to 2 max dopamine sources at a time. So what you simply need to do here is to make sure you do as many level 3 activities for the majority of your days most of the time. For example, when you work out, which is something that increases your dopamine, do not listen to music. When you're doing deep work, which is another activity that increases your dopamine, do not drink coffee or take any other stimulants. Strive to be at level 3 for most of the time, and that way you'll make your brain naturally crave doing more of those things, because those are the only things that will naturally give your brain the dopamine it needs. And step 4 is to control your wins. One of the most powerful ways to increase your dopamine levels is to either talk about your goals before achieving them or celebrating your wins when you achieve them. Talking about your goals and sharing them with other people releases a level of dopamine which is exactly the same as if you had actually achieved them, which essentially makes pursuing your goal after that point on 10 times harder and unfulfilling. When you have a win and you celebrate that win, you amplify the dopamine increase, which creates a tsunami wave and a ton of water out of the pool, which will result in you getting a rut for the following days. So if you want to keep performing and executing at a very high level all the time or most of the time, you need to be very meticulous about 1, sharing your goals with other people, and 2, celebrating your wins. Now, if you follow those 4 steps I just gave you, you will be able to unlock a new level of motivation, and your brain will automatically crave doing hard things simply because you have wired it to only get pleasure from hard things to move you closer to your goals. The only thing that's missing to truly never burn out and strategically use your dopamine for productivity is learning how to properly use tools like caffeine, nicotine, and dopamine enhancing supplements. So click the link below to learn how.